Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz, Shauketaly.
And a very good evening to you. This is Newsline Live. And as Sri Lanka and the rest of the world battles and tries to come to grips with COVID-19, and this whole pandemic situation, the name of the game really is to not yield, to keep the faith and to move forward. And in pursuance of those objectives and what our own government is doing, be it right, be it wrong, everybody is confused. Let's ask that question from a member of the ruling party, and he's right here with us. He's been with us before, but he's right here with us this evening. A very good evening to Dr. Suren Raghavan.
Thank you, Faraz, for having me again. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Do you miss being you were the former governor? Which do you enjoy more, Parliament or being the governor?
I would say in terms of people's benefit, I would prefer to be the governor.
I see.
Immediate benefits of the people.
Okay. Now then, like I said, it is actually after an absence of several weeks that we've got somebody from the government side sitting in that chair.
Oh, really? Okay.
Not for want of my producer, Shan Ranatunga, calling.
Okay.
But for some reason or other, they're not coming. Or they promise, Anyway, they will come. You are here. That's a good start.
Thank you.
It appears to me that the government is fishing around, groping in the dark almost. I'll tell you why I say this. Today we saw the appointment of a minister to be in charge of infectious diseases and COVID-19.
Yeah.
That means that once again, like happened in the Palinista government, they've split this ministry. For example, do you remember the Palinistas split the finance ministry into about 3 parts.
They split many things into parts.
Yes, right. Well, they split everything. All right. They even split our expectations. That's a different story. So the government seems to split this thing. Now you have Pavitra, who is the minister of anything other than infectious diseases and COVID-19. How on earth they're going to grope their way and do that? That's one thing.
Okay.
Then we have the isolated little bits here, little bit there. The government say, look, keep your distance, but if you get on the train, the commuter trains, there is no social distancing there. Over here, we are socially distanced. So all sorts of things, and there's a growing crisis because 62% of our working population are unskilled. And the daily waged earners, we must think of them. So that's why I ask you, and I say to you, is it the fact that the government is groping in the dark?
Well, long question.
Very long.
And I think there are many nuances and facets of that question. But you were very honest, unlike other journalists. Your entry was very fair. You mentioned or you referred to the global condition.
Yes.
These are times that unprecedented. We haven't seen. 21st century, this COVID-19 is never seen before. A pandemic that has hit our scientific community, our academic community, our business world, and our entire trading, our oceans, our air, everything. Every aspect of society, human life had been touched, and not a single country been spared. So this kind of global crisis, where people, they have died, the largest number of people have faced death in non-war time. Not just mere global south in Africa, Asia and Latin America, but in the first world, as we called it, the developed world. And in fact, the large deaths came from those countries which could have otherwise even called helicopters when there is a major accident like in Canada or in US, as you know. What we need to look at is your last line of whether the government of Sri Lanka, the ruling party now, is walking in darkness. As per pre-chat I said, I'm reminded of great Mandela's statement saying, we need to be aware of the direction that we walk than the speed we are walking. The Sri Lankan government right now, under President Gotabaya and the others, yes, we are facing historical challenges. Number one is that we were handed over a government which was already broken in finance. Because after 17 years, this is, you and I agree, I think, on one point. Traditionally, we all believed, every Sri Lankan, urban Sri Lankan, English speaking, Sinhala speaking, believed that the UNP government, UNP people are better in handling finances and economy.
Also they presented themselves
And
we
presented,
believed it.
and then we all believed that. But and then there were also, if you could look at them, and there were prominent economists who had their degrees and PhDs in economic micro, and the bankers who really proven otherwise, lot of talents, and then we had 2-3 finance ministers now. But when they handed over, it was a contracted economy for the first time in 19 years. The economic growth was slowed down to 1.6. So Sri Lanka, my land, motherland, your motherland, was facing an unavoidable financial, I won't call it a catastrophe, but a deep crisis. But then COVID devil did not spare us either.
No.
So we have a double challenge here. What the government has done is, systematically, we have immediately tried to preserve the dollar rate. Look at this. I mean, this last 13-14 months, there had been no other period in the recent past the dollar had been fixed like this. Why? We stopped our imports. Not all imports. We are still importing medicine. We are still importing crude oil. Those essential to life we are importing. But we told ourselves, what are those items that we can live without importing? Tiles. Okay. For instance, okay, I have a friend who is holding 40% of the market share of tile business. He said, look, I understand this condition. Tiles are...
Yes, now all this is good, Dr. Suren, but my point is that, you know, this is a national, we know it's an international problem.
That's a crisis, I would call it.
In Sri Lanka, this is a national crisis.
Exactly.
And so therefore we need a national response, not piecemeal. For example, these the biggest affected people in our economy are the daily wage earners.
Absolutely.
Now, you know, these masks here, they cost only so many rupees. Well, yeah, okay, but that's not only to somebody who needs to earn 1,000 rupees. Now, how did we, for example, the world and Sri Lanka included, how did we fight the that pandemic, which is HIV? There is distribution of condoms and so on. You know, it's a national effort through the family planning associations.
Let me disturb you.
So
we do also our own historical success. The first wave of COVID, Sri Lanka was, even the WHO representatives commended on our achievements.
Yes, I know, but we've lost.
Exactly. So it was not like by May, the society as a whole. This is a socially, culturally spreading disease. This is not something that...
Doctor, I don't mean to be rude, but when you say that, you know, my mind suddenly went back to this thing that all of us Sri Lankans are very proud of, and that's reflected glory. We say, oh yeah, you know, we were 2,500 years ago, we were living in palaces and you guys were living in caves.
Okay.
Or whatever.
Now that's rhetoric.
That's reflected glory.
And maybe
we need it now.
Yeah, maybe we went overboard. Maybe we were a little arrogant of our achievements unnecessarily. And then the entire society relaxed its own guards. And then we were now, so to call, we are now paying the price of that. But as far as your earlier actual question concerned, COVID-19 was not in Sri Lanka. We had other diseases like malaria and all, right? But COVID-19 first time arrived here. Within these 13 months, we have 26 COVID centers in operation. We are doing PCR tests almost 5,000 a day now, right? And machines are getting full. But this is all amidst a major economic crisis where our tourism had almost come to a zero level now.
Yes.
Right?
Well,
and which is 6 billion.
Tourism
Yeah,
is
internationally they say it's about 50 million people have lost jobs.
Yeah.
And I was in Kalutura, I was talking to you. Yesterday I was in Vadu, Kalutura area, talking to my friends. And those people on beaches and those people who sold batik shirts, they're absolute. This is exactly the situation. But then government of Sri Lanka, with all our limitations, we have supported 1.4 million families. That is 14 lakhs families just giving. I know 5,000 rupees is hardly you can scrape through, right? I agree with it. I am not going to stand up and say 5,000 is all good for you for 2 months. No, that kind of nonsense shall not be. That's, I think, disgrace for our own people. But on the rural level, if you look at the 5,000 is a comfort zone, or a kind of a upliftment that we could do. A minimum upliftment we could do. I think the government, President and Prime Minister and the State Minister for Economics would like to give more, but then that would mean that we had to either print more money or we had to do something else to produce that. Right now the government, I am not an economist, as you know, I look at from a political point of view, the steps that government took in order to stable the US dollar and limit our imports that are secondary, and then also 22 food items which were, now Indian media, you are a media guy, you know, Indian media had been gaga last 2 weeks, particularly Tamil Nadu media, on this whole issue about saffron, right? Import of saffron, which went almost, they say the Indian rupees 500 million. So that's almost $1 billion in Sri Lanka. So that should be given to our farmers. So I'm saying COVID-19 had created a unique crisis to us as Sri Lankans, but also it's a call to wake up. It's a call to wake and to ask how we can, as a Sri Lankan, interdependency, yes, we have interdependent economies, but an independent economy, a nationalistic independent economics need where we can fill in. I think that has now, for instance, milk powder. $350 million worth of powdered milk we import to this country, and we are still contesting about the content of it, the chemicalization of those things, and you know, some people went to New Zealand and tested and then came back and said no, and then of course media, blah, all those, but now we are saying, okay, produce it here. For instance, the chicken feed, the feed that we need to continue the poultry industry, 100% it was on corn. But now since we have, so corn growing of that is taking place in Ampara. Of course now we have some conflicts like, okay, the wildlife fellows are saying, okay, don't come to this area. So all those, but on the whole, the big picture, Sri Lanka, now for instance Peru is minus 38% economic disparity.
No, Doctor, I understand, I hear what you're saying. But in between all this, in between this big national crisis, it doesn't really help when the President speaks, and when he did recently, he started his speech by saying that, reminding, if anybody needed reminding, that it was the majority that elected him. We all know that. But when you say that, you kind of leaving the minorities.
Okay, now from economy to you are getting into ethnopolitics. Okay,
well,
right.
Yes, because in this whole national crisis, we need a national response.
But I think
and a national response doesn't mean that
President is very clear that he is the president for Sri Lanka, which means all people in Sri Lanka and all cultures and all religions. Combine this mosaic of Sri Lanka, that he is the president for that. He is very clear about it. But what he is trying to, I didn't study this particular speech that you are saying.
It's the first line.
Yeah, that's the first line. But I think he opens up saying that in this decision-making process, there is, of course, Sri Lanka is a majoritarian democratic country, where it's heavily sided on one side, 72% of the people.
But that's a favorite tool of people who try to usurp democracy.
Right. So the necessity, now I ethnically being considered as a Tamil, the first governor to the northern province, which the war theatre for last 29 years. And then I had been, in 1983, I was made a refugee of my own self. When I was studying in Sinhala, I studied in Sinhala medium. And during my study time, and so many, those days there were no tigers, but they used to call me Parademala, Nadar, Kallatoni, and all those. So it's not something far-fetched and imaginary of my own experience living as a minority in this country. But what we need is a sit down and talk about our political aspirations. And I, for once, Faraz, do not believe that we should anymore use this discourse of minority majority. Yes, politically and numerically we are, but Sri Lankans need to sit down here as
citizen number one said it, not me.
Right.
Citizen number one said it.
You can't take one line out of context. What he was trying to say is that when decision making, he is also challenged by people who are. Sri Lanka is ethnically divided. You know this. We all have to. We don't have to just say that no, we are very democratic. We don't have. Sri Lanka is deeply divided on ethnic lines. So to come out of that, number one, to recognize that there is a problem of that nature, and number two, to say that we Sri Lankans are capable and should be capable of solving that problem. I know some of the Tamil nationalistic have been saying, okay, if you say so, well, we will find our own solution. What do they mean by finding their own solutions?
I think if the government was to do less in terms of business and let the commercial world, the private sector get on with it,
yes,
we may actually find something different.
100%. Let me whoever commented on that to tell me. The Sri Lankan government.
We'll come back to that because I need to go for the headlines now.
Okay.
Don't go away. After all, this is Newsline Live. We'll be back after this short message.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. We're in conversation with Dr. Raghavan here. Dr. Suren, I just want more onto the economy. The government is struggling to find money. They're scratching at the bottom of the barrel. China gave us some money. India did a swap.
400 million.
The
1 billion federal.
Americans are trying to give
1
us
billion federal state.
418 all
and
these
IMF stand by 600
so
million.
Nothing is being done about the proceeds of crime. God knows what's happening to that. But in the meantime, state-owned enterprises, you know, this whole business about the government has no business to be in business is now kicking in even its stark reality. All these things are loss-making enterprises. If you start from Sri Lankan and then work your way down, all these state-owned enterprises, shouldn't they just stop it and give it to the private sector and get them to get on with it?
I wouldn't say give it to private sector, but I would say is that like successful countries elsewhere it's been done, is a restructuring. I mean, your statement is a broad statement that government does not have business to do business. But government can be a regulatory body where the citizens' needs, citizens' protections are being looked after. But even we have 600 odd state-owned enterprises, and out of which only a small fraction is making profit, others are some small amount is break-even, and large number is making losses. Recent factual history, his database history, raw database history, research shows 97 billion rupees we are losing from these big agencies like CEB, Petroleum, Sri Lanka.
Now that's something that I'd like to see the president.
Sri Lankan, for me, I stand on the other side of the camp. My friends may call I am a neoliberal in this. I am saying no, unless we bring a strong structural private-public partnership. These agencies and these agencies, the venerable Mahanayakas need to realize when we call for private partnership, it is not selling out of our national heritage. No, it is only to look after the future bleeding of this country's economy. We cannot go on like this. I mean, Sri Lankan, take Sri Lankan. What is the whole idea about having a national airline, a pride? Who is paying for that pride?
The people, obviously.
Right. So we have said, go for I have argued to say. Now you may find that you may find that even within government there is voice and contesting and the
Yes,
critical government.
but the CEO who was
Yeah.
found out to be having, accepted a bribe,
Yeah.
not in courts here, but in the United Kingdom,
Yeah.
these people have been given bail and they're God knows where now.
Now that's a legal issue. No, so we have to talk about the legalities, the authenticity of the
Yes.
legal issues. Are we
No,
really
I actually
accepting?
want to talk about the commitment of the government,
But the government is committed.
to recover
Yes.
proceeds of crime.
Yeah.
We have the bond scam where
Yeah.
those people are still
Now
enjoying
this
the
morning,
benefits.
Singapore government had announced saying that they will not.
Yeah.
Now this is one of the whole. I mean, I'm in a studio where this whole agency's name had come so many times up on this. But Singapore government had, as I read, Singapore government has said no more and no chance of expatriating him.
I'm terribly surprised that the government have not heard of something called ex parte.
Right.
If he doesn't want to come here,
Yeah.
just take him to court,
Yeah.
get hold of
I
his
think-
assets
yeah.
and recover it
But
from that
here,
way.
I think this particular individual does not have much here. That will be the next step.
Whatever he has
Yeah.
needs to be taken.
So I think the pursuit of justice also should be, and I agree with you, it should be transparent, it should be quick, because delayed justice is denied justice.
Yeah.
It should be quick, and it should be, I think the whole country, the middle class, lower middle class, particularly the future generation, those 4 million students, children who get up in the morning and go to 10,000 of our schools, under 300,000 army of teachers are watching this drama happening, and they are asking hard questions.
And they are,
Unless they are able to-
frustrated,
Exactly,
Doctor,
and
because at the end of their school years, when it's time to go to university, out of an average of 350,000 starting at grade 1,
Yeah.
there is only 30,000 spaces at university.
Exactly. So last week we had this, tomorrow there is going to be a debate on education. If you have time, listen to that, I'm going to present. We need bold structural changes in this country. I think this country demanded a bold man like President Gotabaya.
But is he making good use of that?
That's right. So our appeal to him, of course, as a leader, I can understand, I have worked with three presidents, I understand their constraints, but my expectation that President Gotabaya will not work for the second term, but will do his best, and as an honest statement, head of the
already
state
1 year.
will do. Of course, this 1 year had been gone
Yes.
completely fighting this unknown enemy of the
Yes, well,
humanity.
nothing's going to change. It's COVID's
So
going to be for
therefore,
another year at least.
my appeal, and I think President is my personal chats with him had revealed that he is on that path. He is saying, no, I am not an average traditional politician who is looking at the second term. I want to, 4 years are in front of me, 48 months, let me try to do what I can do best so that Sri Lankan structural changes will take place. My wish is that we need to come around, academics, intellectuals, whatever the party, to see that Sri Lanka, our motherland, is not pushed further off the cliff, but held and reversed our situation. And that kind of nationalistic civic nationalism is what we need right now. That is whether you are far, whatever the religions you and ideologies you believe, me as Surendra Raghavan, but we share this sky together. We share this earth together. We share this place called Sri Lanka.
But this, I love the words, Dr. Raghavan, but the fact is that as far as I'm concerned, there is only one religion. It's the religion of the needs of the people. It's to serve the people. And in this instance, because it's a national crisis, I think we should stuff the politics, right, and get together
Exactly.
and involve all the communities.
I think that call
And
has
there
been
is
all
no
the time.
there is no such thing as north, south, east, west divide, nothing of the
Yeah.
sort. That's how it should be.
That call has been since I am sitting every day in Parliament. Now the budget debate is going on every day. Senior politicians, some of them who are very senior, they visit few hours in the Parliament. But we are newcomers. Me as an academic, I want to learn what's happening in the Parliament. So when we look at that from the government side, a clear call is always echoed. Come in areas of health, in areas of education, in areas of national security, in areas fighting against corruption, common humanity, common Sri Lankan value-based areas, come together and work. Of course, this country's politics is deeply divided on colors and party lines. And then, for instance, that speech that you referred to, Tamil nationalistic politician immediately responded saying, okay, if the president is saying so, we have to find our own solutions and go away. What does that mean, going away? Again, we are talking about this week is the week of celebrations, so-called celebrations. We know what's happening in the international, and Geneva is coming in, even on at least Zoom, Geneva will come in end of February, early March. So that again, that revivalism is kept on asking a kind of a separatist ideological, soft separatism, this what I would call. But so the same politician, you know, cannot go to Jaffna without STF protection. Now, why is this entire duplicity and dichotomy? We need Sri Lankan mindset. This motherland is going to celebrate 75th birthday in 2 years, right? And we are post-independent generation. What we have done, like Seattle said, what we are doing every day, what we are undoing every day, we are responsible to the future generation which is not born
And isn't it almost criminal that after 72 or 73 years, another 2 years, as you say, 75, that as we speak today, apart from the normal ICU beds, for infectious diseases, we don't even have 500.
Yes.
That is the reality. And that is how are we really going to fight this? And I have an interesting message. It's a statement from one of our viewers. It says here, no matter what Dr. Raghavan says, the fact is the government have failed miserably in controlling the second wave.
Well, that controlling the second wave had brought more challenges. I would say that's the reality. But that is his own interpretation, he or her own interpretation. The government had failed. No. The failed government discourse is a political discourse. Sri Lanka is not even a fragile state. Sri Lankan state is a strong state, and we are a very strong government. We have, I mean, not numerically and otherwise. So I think this failed discourse should be, people who brought in the failed discourse have shown how inability to cooperate at this crisis. I would like to see, there are some good thinkers, good, really deep philosophical way of thinkers in the opposition. I would ask them to come forward and to correct ourselves. At least this one way, the global crisis which has come to Sri Lanka is a challenge, but I also think during this challenge it will be proven what we are made of. If we are made of, as the scripture says, I think somewhere St. Paul argues to say, the crisis will show who you are. Whether you are made out of hay, paper or steel, I think we as Sri Lankan need to display ourselves and say, we are not Piduru people. We are made of steel, we can take this challenge, and then that challenge is our foundation for our future.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suren Raghavan, and that is absolutely true. You need to not yield. You need to keep the faith and carry on and move forward. It's now time for the primetime news from News First. Take care, have a wonderful evening ahead of you, and as always, God bless you.
Thank you, Faraz. Thank you very much.